Europe seemed like a small, safe bunker. And now there's war in Europe too. 6,000. Throughout the mission, in the 5 trips we've made, we've trained 6,000 people, civilians and soldiers. So, I think Ukraine might have some of the best paramedics in the world. Those firefighters, paramedics, and soldiers in Ukraine are very, very, very prepared people. My name is Jorge Martín. I'm a technician in emergency response and rescue, a certified European first aid instructor. I've been training people in hemorrhage control and basic life support since I was 16. I currently live in Barcelona and work for this company, Zona Risk, at these facilities. This is my little laboratory where we train people.
Important concept, please don't cross the line, the yellow line, okay? Because this area, you know, big trucks, people move, so in the safety conditions.
All right, I'm going to show you the facilities in general. Everything you see here is the fire training ground. This is the area we use with firefighters. It's a field where people can practice with fire, learn how to use, for example, extinguishers, and learn to intervene in a drill involving an oil fire or a kitchen fire.
Cuando hay fuego de aceite, cuando hay fuego de cocina. Aquí, por ejemplo, tenemos
I work for a private company, so we train the general civilian population on one hand, and on the other, we also train professionals in the emergency sector. Here at these facilities, police come, firefighters come, future emergency medical students come. So we have these 2 tracks. We provide training to civilians, regular people with no professional experience in emergencies. And we also conduct more technical, intensive training for personnel already working in emergencies. The story of Rescue Life as a project is, I believe, a story of transformation. My colleague and I had a small company focused on teaching first aid to motorcyclists. The name of the company or project was Rescue Bike. We realized that no one in the market, in the business world, was teaching first aid to a vulnerable group on the road. So we focused on offering a solution for people engaging in a high-risk activity, like riding motorcycles professionally or as a hobby, right? We worked with Rescue Bike for about 2 or 3 years, and when the project was starting to become established, an independent project, when we were beginning to work with brands like Honda, Harley-Davidson, and BMW, the war in Ukraine broke out. The conclusion or reflection we came to was, if we, as civilians, and I, who have been working for so many years and love sharing how to provide first aid, can do this here with motorcyclists in a country without war, why can't we offer the same training to civilians in Ukraine who are living through the consequences of war?
So in one emergency situation, for understand what happened in the body and what you need in the first no minutes, in the first seconds, is no have or no have blood in the victim, no? So I think in the wartime, you know, in this case, this is a Dnipro Ukrainian tourniquet. The difference for the tourniquets have a China tourniquets without certification and certificates tourniquets. What is the difference? The materials. And the material is possible provocate you, in the case you have this, you die, or in the case the material and the certificate element is okay, this material, this element save your life. Yo estaba en mi casa.
I was at home, in the shower, and suddenly my partner at the time shouted, "Jorge, war has broken out in Ukraine." I was showering and thought, I said, "That's intense, isn't it? I mean, there's already war all over the world. Europe seemed like a small, safe bunker, and now there's war in Europe too." We had no connection to Ukraine. We didn't know any Ukrainians, had never been to Ukraine. It was about developing our work in a scenario as harsh as war. So my first idea was, okay, I'll grab my medical equipment, my defibrillator, my oxygen backpack, the 4 things I have, and go with the firefighters. Because I've always thought that, for me, as someone who's not military or police, with no connection to that professional world, the true heroes for civilians in a city are firefighters, right? They deal with terrorist attacks day in and day out, which here in Spain, fortunately, is very rare. So I started talking to people on Instagram, looking for contacts. The first trip we organized to Ukraine was, I'd say, horrific, because it wasn't comfortable. We took a plane to Poland. In Poland, we took a train to Lviv. And in Lviv, we took a train to Kharkiv. This was in April, May, a few months after the full-scale war began. It was me, a doctor from Asturias, and a nurse who had been a soldier from Barcelona. We carried suitcases, backpacks, and the equipment we brought was what we could carry by hand. We didn't have a vehicle, nothing. The money for the plane tickets to Poland, for example, was donated by Harley Davidson Barcelona in exchange for a training session. We went to a very dangerous place, right? Kharkiv, in those months, had parts of the Kharkiv region occupied by the Russian army. And we went to deliver supplies and provide support to what were, or are, the territorial defense forces. There weren't professional Ukrainian armed forces in Kharkiv at that time. They were all volunteer soldiers with some professional leadership.
What happened in the case one person have this type of injury, no? One arterial blood in the inguinal side or one arterial blood in the axillary side. In this case, it's not possible to use a tourniquet. Or what happened in the case you have a one open trauma in your leg and you don't have tourniquet. You need to make tamponovania. No packaging. So this is basic skills. Maybe for one person never have this type of skills. It's possible to think, oh wow, I need put my fingers with one banda suvania for make pression and stop the blood. Yes, you need to make this because in the case you only have this, or in the case you are blocked like a lot of blood, the people die in 3 minutes. 3 minutes, okay? So with simple material or maybe with your socks, you need take pression, 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 This technique for sure is more recommendation make with gloves, but in this case I don't have lot and it's only one demonstration, okay? This technique is in ukraińsku tamponowania, in Spain the name is empaquetamiento, in English the name is packaging. One example for this technique saved a lot of lives in the historical moments in the world is the terrorist attack in Boston Marathon. No? In this terrorist attack, a lot of people, a lot of civilian population with basic training like this save a lot of lives with the shocks, because in the case you have one hole here, one hole here, one hole here, one hole here, and you don't have enough tourniquets, you need make pressure and you need packaging this hole for make pressure with your hands and stop the blood.
We spent more time traveling there and back than we could actually stay, so we were only there for 3 days because we had a little mishap. In Poland, in Warsaw, the airline lost all our suitcases with all the medical simulators, bulletproof vests, and important stuff. So the mission was supposed to be a week of continuous training with soldiers, but we were stuck in Poland for 2 days because all our equipment had disappeared. We arrived in Lviv, and in Lviv, the mother of a soldier who was talking to me on Instagram, someone I didn't know at all, picked us up. It was curfew, so this woman went to the Lviv square to pick us up from the bus that took us from Poland to Lviv at night. We slept at her house, then took a train from Lviv to Kharkiv. In Kharkiv, we were met by Yaroslav, a person I think is quite famous in Ukraine, who has a mission in Kharkiv. He's a guy who also speaks Spanish, a former professor in Madrid, in Alcalá de Henares, a chemist and mathematician. He introduced us to a very famous journalist named Maria Sanovia. So we met Maria Sanovia, who I believe is still in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, 3 months after the war started. She was the person who accompanied us, took photos, and stayed with us. I realized there was a huge need to provide training not only at the military level, but also for civilians. So we returned months later with the help of a girl I care about a lot, Katarina Polanska, a Ukrainian activist who now lives in Poland. With her, we did all the work to establish the foundation and stay there. Thanks to Katarina, we spent the rest of the time in Ukraine. I spoke with Katarina on Instagram, told her what we did in Kharkiv with the soldiers, and she, as a Ukrainian and compatriot, said, "Okay, no problem. I'll pay for your trip back to Ukraine if you want to return." That's when Sister Lucia appeared and said, "Okay, guys, I can lend you a van, but this van is a donation for Ukraine, so you can use it, but you have to return with it because it needs to be sent back to Ukraine later." So, thanks to Katarina Polanska and Sister Lucia, we carried out the second humanitarian mission to Ukraine, this time by land, with our own vehicle, with all the equipment, stretchers, and first aid kits. It was a trip with Jose Colon, a journalist who's currently in Ukraine, along with John Marco Benedetto and Agus Morales from 5W Magazine. We made a 5-day trip to Kyiv. What happened when we arrived in Ukraine? The second, I believe, major Ukrainian offensive against Russia on the front began, and the soldiers we were going to train were mobilized and sent from Kharkiv to other positions. The first night we were in Ukraine, Katarina got a call and said, "Guys, I have bad news. We don't have anyone to train because the soldiers can't stay in Kharkiv. They're being moved to other places." That's when, thanks to her school principal, I think, Katarina's school principal said, I know a principal of another school. We can go train at schools. I said, of course, that's a great idea. A school with parents, students, teachers. It's the civilian public. We're civilians. It's a vulnerable public. I imagine there are tons of schools, institutes, and universities that don't have the money to pay for this kind of training. That's where Rescue Life was born. We remembered how many people mobilized when the war in Ukraine started. Everyone was going to Ukraine. Taxi drivers, truck drivers, people with their cars. But afterward, all that massive help faded. And we said, okay, we want to stay in Ukraine. That's where Rescue Life was born.
And one of these elements is different materials. With these materials, I make the trainings in Ukraine. This is a MPO, nasopharynx cannula, but this and this or other elements is more, it's not advanced, but it's not basic skills. This save lives, but for sure the first step for save lives is stop the blood, in every case.
6,000. Throughout the mission, in the 5 trips we've made, we've trained 6,000 people, civilians and soldiers. That's a but, for example. 90% of the people we trained were civilians. The last time we went to Ukraine, we flew to Ukraine, then returned to Ukraine with Sister Lucia Karam's van, and then went back to Ukraine with an off-road vehicle, a 4x4, that a mechanic school here in Barcelona helped us fix up. A Nissan Patrol from the 90s. And we went. I finished my beach work in September. We spent the whole summer and the previous winter months preparing the vehicle, gathering materials, donations, helmets, bulletproof vests, and we went to Ukraine on September 19th and returned from Ukraine on June 15th. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. 10 months. This was the last trip to Ukraine, the last mission. From Barcelona, well, part of Spain, to collect materials. We left from Barcelona, took a ferry to Civitavecchia, Italy, and from Italy, traveled inside Ukraine. I was very surprised that in Ukraine, many people who are now medics had nothing to do with the medical world before the war. They're highly trained people who, unfortunately, have learned out of necessity to care for war victims. So, I think Ukraine might have some of the best paramedics in the world. At the military level, they're very well-trained people. But I also realize that many military units, their medics, because of a lack of resources, materials, and extensive training, didn't have prior experience that would allow them to work effectively. I have admiration because people with no resources, with very little specific education, and with very low salaries and economic conditions are dealing with terrorist attacks day in and day out. It's not simple. Psychologically, physically, it's not easy. So, total respect. I believe that when you work in emergencies, experience on the ground, in the field, is much more important than all the years you've studied in a classroom, at a university, or in a school. So I think, yes, the war in Ukraine has existed since 2014, but on a large scale, for example, maybe Kiev's paramedics had never handled a bombing of a civilian building. Maybe Kiev's firefighters had never rescued people from a bombed building in Kiev because the war was confined to a specific area. So it's not about what I think. It's natural, obvious, and logical that people working day in and day out with few resources, little prior training, and through many material donations. For example, Barcelona firefighters have sent trucks to Kyiv to provide more tools. Those firefighters, paramedics, and soldiers in Ukraine are very, very, very prepared people. But for me, it's for one reason. They work in the worst scenarios, with very few economic and material resources. That forces you as a professional to be smart, to value the materials you have, to care for them, clean them, cherish them, respect them, because if they break, there's no more. And on the other hand, working daily in situations that, for example, in Spain, happen once every 20 years makes you a high-level professional. There's a word: resilience. The Ukrainian people involved in the war, working to save lives, volunteers, emergency workers, volunteer soldiers, are resilient people. They do big things with very little. That's resilience. For me, that's the appeal of the Ukrainian people. Fighting their whole damn lives, defending their home. When they bombed the pediatric hospital, everyone went to grab things to help the firefighters, to help the soldiers. For me, that's the spirit of the Ukrainian people, the good people of Ukraine. I hope the whole world in Ukraine would be a demonstration of that spirit.
And this corner is all material. Look, this is is a good. Remember, this helmet is for the Zaporizhia firefighters. Not Zaporizhia, sorry, Brudianka. And it's American helmet. Donate, I think, for USA. This helmet I give me one Ukrainian firefighter work behind Russia army. And it's like a, I don't know, it's a good memories in this time. Very good people, firefighter, Ukrainian people. The firefighter work here is like a public work with very big, good conditions. It's okay, it's okay, but firefighter in Ukraine don't have nothing and make all. Yeah.
I think Europe right now, because over the last few years or decades, there's been a state of peace, a state of well-being. It's given us time to work based on protocols. Protocols are studied with many years of research. One of the things that has allowed them to gain more knowledge is that many people from the United States, Canada, Europe, from all over the world have gone to Ukraine to say,
this is the instruments, this is the protocols, and it's not more good in front of you. It's only
it's just the protocol that's proven to work. So, of course, protocols work here in Europe and here in Spain, because if I call an ambulance will come, right? What happens in Ukraine?
In the front line, and it's not possible to take the ambulance. So the medical concepts for the war situations is totally changed. It's not possible to compare the intelligence for the Ukrainian people in the wartime for the workers' emergency in Spain, because it's different scenario. Maybe the experience in the wartime have a lot of knowledge for self.
I think Ukrainian professionals have a lot of experience, a lot of training, but they lack tools. For example, helmets, right? A firefighter's helmet has an expiration date. Here in Spain, you can't use an expired firefighter's helmet. I hope that the people of Ukraine never have to teach the rest of the world how to act in a war. I hope. For example, what's the problem with donating F-16s or fighter jets to Ukraine at the military level? Ukrainian pilots need training to know how to operate that plane, right? So, of course, Ukrainians have something that Europeans don't have, and Europeans have something that Ukrainians don't have. Ukrainians have courage, Ukrainians have a need, and we in Europe don't have that need. But we have money and tools. So, I think the equation, or the healthy, coherent mix, is that we can all learn from each other. Because here, I have protocols and tools that, fortunately, I'll never have to use. But the Ukrainian people who need those tools don't have them in situations where they always need to use them. An example is fire trucks. How many fire trucks from the Soviet era are used day in and day out? A ton. And they're the best. Why don't they break? I'd like to return to Ukraine for an objective reason. People who are willing to understand that a country like Ukraine, a sovereign country being militarily invaded, needs help, and that we can contribute with our work, a force to build, a force to resist, should be in Ukraine. So, I'd like to return to Ukraine because my work in Ukraine is more necessary than my work here in Spain. In the end, it's a question of priority. What's more important? A country at war where civilians die every day due to lack of training, lack of assistance, lack of resources, or being here where I have tons of comforts. It's also important to train people here, but the need isn't the same. What's the downside? What stops us from returning to Ukraine? We're not a big NGO. We don't have financial support. We don't have help from any organization to be able to stay there. Well, in Ukraine, on a personal level, I've had many very good experiences. I'll always say that my years in Ukraine have been the 2 best years of my life, where I've learned, discovered other people, another culture, another food, where they've taught me to be a better person and a better professional. But in Ukraine, I've also faced the harshness of living in a country at war. As a foreigner who doesn't speak the language, practically as an independent. They've broken my heart in Ukraine too. Don't include this in the interview, okay?
Without jokes.
But no, without jokes. There's no reason I wouldn't want to return to Ukraine. I'd go to Ukraine tomorrow. But anyone in Ukraine needs to be able to live there. So, well, that's it. This is a small box of memories from Ukraine. This was one of the first gifts a school principal gave us. As a symbol of strength, a symbol of power, thanking us for the work we were doing. And well, it brings up a lot of pain or memories, right? The doll too.
Estas pinturas las hicieron niños rescatados.
These paintings were made by children rescued from Russia
Fundación Save Ukraine,
who live at the Save Ukraine Foundation.
24 of April of 2024. 1 year before, right, just now. Two paints, dos dibujos pintados por niños que Save Ukraine rescató de Rusia.
Two drawings painted by children that Save Ukraine rescued from Russia. And, well, here they are.
Save Ukraine.
And the Save Ukraine flag.
Do you like winter in Ukraine?
Tak.
Yes, yes, yes.
El invierno en Ucrania.
Winter in Ukraine is real.
How did you handle it?
Good. We had a little house near Kyiv.
En Kiev. Yo nunca había vivido.
I'd never lived in a country where 10 months of the year everything is white. All white, right?
Creo que
So,
el invierno
I think winter is part of Ukraine.
all horizon is white. It's like a wow.